Welcome back, everyone. This is David Higbee. I am the director of Bridge Lacrosse. I have a really good friend with us, an alum of Bridge Lacrosse, someone who is I have not had a chance to connect with in a couple years. She's back in Dallas. So, Chantal, how are you doing?
Hey, David. I'm just happy to see your face. I know we haven't seen each other for, I think, maybe 3 years or so.
It's been
maybe
a while.
The last time I saw you, but I don't feel too disconnected. I mean, I've been keeping up with the Bridge Insta page and Facebook posts. So
let me start with the first thing. Just overall, how are you holding up, and what are you doing to keep yourself occupied?
yeah, I mean, I've been trying to take it easy. I know none of us have much control over what's happening, so I'm trying to not lose too much hope, and definitely reaching out to my friends and family members for that emotional support, because I mean, I think we have to be honest about what we're feeling, and it's okay if we're not doing okay. But I've been trying to find ways to keep myself busy. I've been reading a lot. I searched for stuff to do. I applied to serve with AmeriCorps at a service center downtown that provides food options and coordinates the donations to hand out to people in need and low-income families, people experiencing homelessness. So I think it's been cool just feeling like I've been, making myself useful and continuing to work on, food security in another way here in the U.S. So
Yeah.
definitely keeping the mindset of, my Peace Corps work, my service work doesn't end just because it ended, in such a way in Panama. There's so much more work to do after as a returned Peace Corps volunteer. So
it's nice to hear that you're still finding ways to be service oriented. How is your family doing? How are your sisters, and how are your parents?
yeah, my dad's still working, so we're just trying to encourage him to remember to be responsible, just be careful. I mean, I worry for him.
Yeah, certainly.
I think he's the one that's exposed more than all of us. But my mom's been keeping busy at home. She'll find something to do.
Good.
So at least the house is always clean, because she's always finding new things to rearrange.
Right.
And then my sister, older sister, she's a teacher, so she is doing online learning.
Yeah.
I know she's doing a lot of work to keep the kids engaged. I'm seeing people old teachers at Rangel too, and I really, really admire them for truly caring for the kids' emotional and mental state right now. So, and then Crystal, Crystal.
I love Crystal, yeah.
She was also a Bridge alum, and she's finishing off her college work online as well. So
okay.
We have the whole family back in town.
Yeah, which has got to be the first time in a long time.
In a long time, yeah. I couldn't count.
We can kind of jump around on the timeline of this, but I think I'm most interested in hearing just your last few months. So you were on a 2-year commitment with the Peace Corps, and obviously COVID hit, and sort of that abruptly ended a little bit earlier than you expected. What's been the last couple months like leading up to today?
I think at the point of the evacuation, I had been serving for 1 year and 8 months. So I needed roughly about 5 months to complete. We do a total of 27 months. At my stage, my group, those 5 months were actually the most crucial months of our service, because we spend 1 year kind of figuring things out, analyzing, evaluating. A lot of us were working on writing grants, and then that's a process in itself.
Mm-hmm.
For me, my program in sustainable agriculture systems, we were just about to enter our full year of cultivation due to the season. So we were in summer when we were evacuated, and the wet season just began.
Okay.
Last week. So we had a project ready to roll out with the new Farmers Association that we organized during my time there. Also, working with the artisans and helping them strengthen their group and figuring out markets for them. We had a lot of fairs that we planned to attend during the summer in March, April, and May. And well, all of that obviously was put on hold. I spent the past year and a half kind of working up to this point where people were empowered enough and organized enough, trained enough that we could maybe see a little bit more in action for these last 5 months. And unfortunately, it does feel like a lot of potential was taken away.
Right.
But I do have a lot of, faith that those last few months leading up to COVID-19 evacuation, that I spent them, in the best way I could have. So I, don't feel too guilty or too remorseful, but I'm just trying to figure out how I can still support these people from afar, or even when I go back independently and visit and see how things don't just, fall apart, because our whole work revolves around sustainability. And
Right.
I think that was my biggest worry, that, everything that we worked for, we're trying to begin and start in my community, that it would fail after I left. So
Yeah. How much time was there between when you got the news that, hey, you guys are having to leave, and when you actually had to board that plane?
we were notified at 8:30 p.m. on March 15th. People that could leave that night needed to leave.
Oh, really?
But most of us were gonna have to leave the next morning. So they notified us to leave as soon as possible. There was no time for delays or goodbyes. That's what we were notified. And because I was the safety warden in my area, I was kind of in contact with the office. I just had a feeling, I was feeling really down that week, because I was reading too much about the virus and news, and I was just thinking things were not going to go well in the best case scenario. There was going to be new issues or problems when it comes to travelers, coming in and out. Like, I just was thinking way too much, but I wasn't too wrong. I guess it was a gut feeling that I had. So I went to go check signal that night. I figured it out at 10 p.m. I found out at 10 p.m.
Okay.
And that morning, like, I was able to give some stuff away and hug some people, but I know most people left, their vegetables, there. They couldn't even throw them out.
Yeah.
Couldn't even say bye to their host families and closest friends. And there wasn't
that's
really
awful.
any reason, notification to community members. And we don't have, good phone signal, and most people don't have phones. So it's been difficult to give people an answer. And I mean, I'm sure they figured it out by now, but it kind of feels like, in a way, betrayal.
I'm really sorry to hear that. That's definitely tough. I didn't realize you had so little time.
Yeah. So then
between...
we got to the city. Luckily, they contracted some buses for us, private buses. So most of us were able to get on those. We were really worried, because where I was living, my indigenous province had closed down the roads for any outsiders. And then those were put in place as soon as we left. So that afternoon, so we really couldn't have left any later than that. Some people were able to get flights that next morning. As people got into the city, they were booking flights for the next morning. And then that's when we had complications, because there were a lot of flights that were booked, and then turned out that they had been overbooked, or they couldn't get people out. There were so many issues. So we spent 4 days in Panama City, waiting for our office to figure things out with the embassy. And they finally contracted a charter plane to come to take us all out.
Yeah, that's definitely a lot to process in such a small amount of time.
Right. But I mean, like I'm saying, I don't know if you saw for my birthday, like my Rangel sisters drove by and kind
I
of
did.
just welcomed me back. And, I really can't ask for a better network and support system here. So
Yeah.
Taking it day by day.
A lot to digest for sure in such a short amount of time. So I'm glad you're back, and certainly I'm glad you're safe. But yeah, that's definitely tough under the circumstances to leave. Essentially you're home for the last almost 2 years. So
Right.
Again, I'm kind of jumping around on the timeline, but not entirely well versed in how the Peace Corps works. Can you share a little bit about how you got to the Peace Corps, that decision process, what some of the aspects of the program stood out to you in making that commitment?
I think, going back to my time at Rangel, I know a big aspect of the system there is they really promote community service, and they have a lot of opportunities for us to get involved in that way. I think most of what I enjoyed and like kind of viewed as beneficial and influential in my future and career, I think it was through their service, serving with nonprofits in Dallas, just meeting all these people, mentors, etc. I was always inspired to continue working along that route. And during my first job at the YMCA, I met an RPCV, a return Peace Corps volunteer.
Okay.
Kind of really sold the program to me. He realized how much I liked doing community service, so he recommended it to me. That's the first time I heard about Peace Corps, and I was 16. And ever since, I think that's always been my plan A. I applied on New Year's Eve of my senior year, and I was notified in January to interview.
Okay.
And then by mid-February, I had received an invitation. And then from there, February until I departed July, I pretty much had a lot of tasks to clear medically and legally.
Okay.
So that was a really, really extensive process. And I was finally cleared like end of June. And then I departed in July. I arrived to Panama July 4th, 2018. And then there you spend 2 months. So all posts across the world, it used to be 3 months, and because of budget cuts and all that, now it's 2 intensive months of training.
Okay.
In Panama, every post is different, but in Panama, we lived with, host families near the city. So we could travel to the office and back, and we're trained, culturally, language, technical skills, all of that. So,
okay.
And then from there, we really don't have a say of where we go. They kind of they call it like a 2-month interview and evaluation. So then
you're in Panama for this training then?
Yes, we're in Panama for this training. So then they match us according to our personalities and like just pretty much how they evaluate us throughout the training period. So then they announce we're invited to serve, and we commit for 2 years. Mm-hmm.
You mentioned that you don't get a choice in terms of where you go.
Yes.
Is Panama kind of a surprise, or do you have some idea?
Oh, actually, for the time that I applied, they had recently changed that option. So it used to be you were kind of pretty much applying generally, and then Peace Corps would decide for you.
Okay.
But Peace Corps wanted to make the position and the commitment a little more realistic for people, like to take it seriously as a job. So they gave that option to choose a country. But once you're in the country, you don't choose your community.
Okay, I understand now. Okay, gotcha. So was Panama then on your was that your top?
Yes, Panama was I wasn't really sure what country, but I knew I wanted the region of Latin America.
Okay.
So I know that one of the program that I saw in Panama, stood out to me, and I wanted to continue learning and speaking more Spanish. And I don't know, I've always had like a calling to kind of go back to where my family's roots, go back to. So I wanted to spend time in Latin America, and I had met a Panamanian in New York once that, just gave me such a good impression. I was like, why not?
Yeah.
Why not?
A lot of the work you're doing was ag-based. How did your background in school, your degree, how did that carry over into what you were doing with the Peace Corps?
Yeah, I actually never studied agriculture. I live in, an urban city here in Dallas. So
right.
I really never had, I didn't have previous experience with that, but I was always interested in learning more about, food production, and I wanted to truly, feel that connection to food security, because I think sometimes here we do take things for granted because it is readily available.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of, in a way, wanted to force myself to see the reality. In college, I found a work study position to kind of like work volunteer at an urban farm in downtown St. Louis.
Okay.
So just, we had a nice greenhouse, we had good seeds, we had, things. It was my introduction to kind of like, the food scene and agriculture in general. So
Right.
I wanted to know more, and I think, applying to this position was kind of just pushing myself out there and, trying to get that field experience and hands-on experience when it comes to food.
I guess we're starting to see more of those urban farms. Are you familiar with Banton Farms?
Somebody mentioned it at the Equal Heart headquarters with the program I'm doing currently.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
he definitely sold it, and he was like, you should check it out when you're bored. But
You should. Oddly enough, we're connected to them loosely. The founder, Darren Babcock, his wife,
wow.
Tetta, is a former coach of ours.
Wow.
We got connected years ago, and we've seen them grow and grow in the neighborhood of Banton. So it's interesting. We've gotten in there a couple times for community service projects, like as a bridge organization, as a bridge family. I don't have a lot of familiarity with agriculture. I am aware of, more and more urban farms coming up into certain neighborhoods that lack access to healthy foods and fresh foods.
And it's all very important to every individual in the world because, in the end, we all eat. We all appreciate food. And I just think, we could do a lot more when it comes to access and not wasting as much as we do. Going back to what the Peace Corps experience and what got me to apply and interest and whatnot, I do remember one comment. I remember talking to you about it during high school. I think about applying to the Peace Corps, thinking about my future jobs, or maybe I think it may have been when we got coffee once during college. I wasn't sure when to do Peace Corps.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking more like maybe starting off with a job and then maybe doing it later on in life. And I remember you were like, do it right after college. And I said, why? And you just said that's what you want to do. And that's what, it'll just be, it may become more difficult, and it's just, you'll find a new excuse to push it further back. So just, if you're really interested, do it now. And honestly, I definitely took that advice when I was deciding, my life timeline. So I always think about that comment about how I'm really glad I did it at this stage in life because, it's always been my plan A. So, So David, you that comment definitely made an impact in my life course. So.
I appreciate that. That's nice of you to say. It was fun to watch the four of you all, that graduating class really grow up. And so much of the evolution of Bridge really started with you four. That you guys were one of the first classes I really knew from kind of the beginning of high school, was with you all those 4 years of high school. The Peace Corps, I want to go back to just because it is something I'm not very familiar with. With the experience that you've gained now, what are your next steps?
I definitely want to continue the focus on sustainability, development. I'm really passionate about it, so I'm trying to see how I can fit, in this crazy system in each society, in each community that we live in. So my original plan was to develop a Peace Corps response position to work alongside the food, agriculture, and organization, UN agency.
Yeah.
To stay a third year in Panama, doing work within that region I was working in. There was a new program that was gonna enter, and kind of just help with the same stuff area, like nutrition, food, strengthening organizations, but different program.
Yeah.
So I kind of wanted to continue that. However, I think I may want to take advantage of the fellowship programs that are available to, response or return Peace Corps volunteers.
Okay.
So I'm thinking of graduate school.
Very cool.
A graduate program in some, development, sustainability kind of
Yeah.
within that area.
Do you have a plan then, or certainly a hope to return to Panama then? Is that one of the larger goals?
I definitely want to return to Panama to visit. I'm not sure yet if the time period of how soon things could get better when it comes to public health, overall health globally. So I'm just trying to be realistic and not, set too many high expectations.
Yeah, it's got to be tough.
For what I want. Yeah.
There's
But
not much of a timeline.
I'm thinking of reaching out to the office and the FAO people, because I think I still want to develop a position for somebody to that is ready, and once the program opens back up, maybe if I help develop this position, people can continue working in that area, supporting that area through a Peace Corps program. So maybe I could. I mean, I'm just kind of playing around with ideas, but I'm thinking of maybe doing grad school and then doing response and then kind of finding a job to settle.
I gotcha. With the Peace Corps right now, you have essentially a few more months left. What is your connection with them right now, because you were still supposed to be in Panama?
So we actually were granted, we were given the Return Peace Corps volunteer title as if we had been completed service, and we pretty much got all our benefits as well. So
Okay.
non-competitive eligibility, the fellowship, and our transition readjustment allowance. So it's been kind of, nice, knowing that they've been really supportive. They've extended our health coverage for 2 more months. I'm currently still needing to complete a lot of our final reports. So
Okay.
I've been in contact with them. That's what I'm saying. I've been kind of putting off. It's just every time I started, I get mad, and then I get sad, and it's just,
Yeah.
not a good combination. So I kind of try to avoid it, but there's a lot of reports that I need to complete. So when the program does open back up, they can use that information to send another volunteer in the area, in the
Gotcha.
community I was working at.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool. So I know this is an impossible question to answer, but give us a kind of a sample of your average day. And again, I imagine there was no such thing as an average day, but just some highlights of your morning, afternoon, evenings.
Yeah. So I definitely had no strict routine living out in rural Panama, but definitely I think what I remember most is waking up comparably pretty early to to how I wake up in when I'm in an urban area. Even when I was in Panama City, I could wake up at 9, and that was sleeping in heavily.
Right.
But back in my community, I usually wake up at 6:30, make coffee, and my next door neighbor would visit me every morning for a cup and random conversations. I really appreciate him, and I know he cried as I was leaving, and just seeing a grown indigenous man just break down in tears, that just breaks my heart.
Yeah.
But he definitely took me under his wing, and he visited me, supported me. I never felt alone. So his visits in the morning is probably one of the things I miss the most.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would usually, during the wet season, I would have coffee and then go to the farms. So with the farmer that would invite me, or I would go to the group one, or my demonstration plot. I would take my time. I wasn't too usually I would make it by 8:30 to the farms, and then just work up until 1 or 2 right before the rain would hit, and then visit people.
Yeah.
Visiting people is very, very important in the culture I lived in for the past 2 years. So if I visited more than 2 people in one day, that was quite a productive day.
Okay, I gotcha.
For sure. My
What are
one-on-one visits, personal relationships, all of that had to be, cultivating trust. All of that was done through personal visits to people's homes. And then also I would some days I'd have my office days where I would stay home all day, clean, and people would, I was always guaranteed at least 3 people stopping by to hang out and,
That's nice.
and have coffee with me.
What are the primary crops that were being grown on the farms you were visiting?
Yeah, our primary crops were like the staple crops of Panama, which were rice, beans, corn, and a lot of root crops. So
Okay.
tubers, like, I don't know how to say it in English actually.
I was gonna say a
The names,
tuber.
dashi, notoe. It's just
Okay.
like root
Yeah.
crops,
Kind
like
of
a potato.
starchier, maybe. Yeah.
Starchy, yeah. A lot
Delicious.
of
I'm
those.
sure. Delicious. I'm sure.
Yeah, it does the job.
With COVID then and this crisis and talking about food security, what are some of the challenges that are really kind of coming to light right now that you see with this experience?
I think Panama is doing a good job of keeping people calm, and just they've come up with a lot of good strategies to quickly, implement. I think they, within like the first week of the first case, when the first case was announced, they had already established the stay at home kind
Mm-hmm.
of order. So the government has been stepping up and sending, food bags and donations to people in rural areas. What I'm thinking is they should really also focus on bringing in the agricultural tools that have been missing, because people already do farm. It's
Mm-hmm.
just that they have a lot of what, that they're missing is certain tools, seed quality, all that stuff. So
Right.
a lot of those programs that meant to be implemented with this new, administration, I think have been suspended, and that's a big no. Like,
Okay.
the wet season just started, so they should also, act on not suspending that, and bringing those tools in so they can complement the food donations with the tools that they can use to increase their food production. So
Mm-hmm.
they can kind of take some control over feeding their families,
Yeah.
because we don't really know how long this will end, and they also have to depend a lot on the weather and the climate and the season. So
Certainly.
time is definitely critical.
Certainly. Yeah. The timeline is tough right now.
Yeah, most people in my area didn't leave anyway, because there weren't any funds to go out into the towns and
Mm-hmm.
the cities. So it's not really impacting them in such a, way that changes their lifestyle.
Are these pretty
Um,
isolated communities then?
they're truly up in the mountains, and
Huh.
it would take me 2 hours to get from the town, like the town, to my entrance. Good for them now, because there hasn't been a case within the region, but eventually they're gonna have to start opening up, the roads. I know that, like, my host family, a lot of my closest counterparts, they that worked really hard in the farms, also complemented their food grown by themselves with, outside products and stuff,
Okay.
to and it was, they did what they can, and at least they ate
Yeah.
something, and kept their families well. But with these food shortages, I'm just worried for the people that don't farm as much and
Right.
don't have enough stored in reserve for these upcoming months, because they still, even if they do farm, it's not readily available until
Of course.
they are able to harvest. So
That's kind of my next question then. Of the farms that you primarily worked with, were the yields primarily for the community or commercial?
oh yeah, it was all for self-consumption.
Okay.
So I was trying to get them to the point where some families, not all, but in my community, some families, I think, could get to the point where they could start selling some outside of the community. But in reality, we're mostly trying to just diversify the crops in order to get people to have enough food to feed their own families. My community, I was the first volunteer. I had a previous, but he only lasted 2 months because he got into a machete accident. So
Oh dear.
he was at the farms and he fell and he grabbed onto his machete, and he was medically separated. So then I came in the next year.
Okay.
I was the first kind of like outsider to enter the community. And as I came in, new programs were also starting to like work in that community. So I honestly saw a lot of growth and a lot of support from programs and the government and Peace Corps development during my time there. So my community, I think, has a lot of potential. It's just in its very early stages.
This time period is certainly an interruption to a lot of that progress, then,
Yes,
which is unfortunate.
exactly. But I have faith that people will keep up their hopes, and that's why I feel like I should really try to keep communication with them so they can, make themselves heard and pressure the the government to not forget to support them a little more than
than maybe they have been.
other areas. Yeah.
The rural farming is interesting because it does seem like, we're, from a technological standpoint, it doesn't seem like we should be that far away from, being able to produce, from having communities produce more than they need and therefore they can sell. What are some of the biggest challenges then in turning these rural farms into larger, like you said, more sustainable farms?
Yeah, there's a lot of factors that come into play. So just soil quality, I think,
Okay.
was probably the biggest in my area. People work on kind of like hillsides, and the terrain is just the inclination is just it's very inclined. So they lose a lot of really good topsoil. Most of them have they've been accustomed to depend on chemicals, but not all of them, or most of them, also struggle to find funds to pay for them. So there's kind of been a struggle of getting the landscape, so dependent on these chemicals, like these pests that have just, evolved in such a way because of the resistance that they have developed. There's just so many new problems and issues that arose from overusing a lot of chemicals to produce higher yields, yet there's not enough. People don't have, many sources of income coming in, so they also can't afford it. So it's just when they do produce and they can't, buy fertilizer, they can't buy fungicides, then they suffer a lot when it comes to the yields. And also, like, another issue would be storage. So they really have to, it's humid, it's tropical, they don't have a lot of storage facilities to keep the seeds well. I know a lot of farmers have had a lot of their harvests go bad because the rain came unexpectedly.
Yeah.
And when things just go bad, they go bad, right? There really isn't a backup. So these people, they're very hard workers. It's just they also have a lot of harsh conditions to work against.
A lot of environmental stuff that out of their control.
That's the thing with climate change and all that stuff. We really see the impacts hit these farmers. There's these subsistence farmers having to deal with and adapt to, because I think as the years go by, we do see shorter and longer summers and shorter winters, and winters just means the rainfall season. And it's so unfortunate because these farmers are used to this timeline that is essential when it comes to plant growth and production, that they have to truly be careful when it comes to all of that, because I know a lot of farmers that have had the whole field not yield anything at all because of climate conditions out of their hands.
It's got to be tough to be there and see kind of all the things sort of essentially working against farmers and be able to sustain for themselves and their families. What are you going to miss most about Panama?
I miss just being relaxed. When I first got here, I tried to say hi to my neighbor, and I think he saw me saying hi, and he just didn't respond. He just went inside his house. Right. And that kind of hit hard. I mean, in Panama, or at least in the area I was living at, you get, that human warmth, people like responsive, like that human, relationship, personal human relationship that I really, really enjoyed from living down there. That sometimes I feel like we're not too focused on that here. Community.
Yeah. Our timelines for human interactions are maybe a little shorter. We're a little more rushed here. So
Exactly. So I'm kind of having to get myself to kind of speed it up on how I go about my day.
Yeah. It was really nice to see you, really nice to catch up and get that whole story of your experience.
For sure,
really
David.
And yeah,
that should be good for summer.
Good. And yeah, and tell the rest of your family I said hello, tell Crystal I said hi, and yeah, be safe, and we'll hopefully we'll see each other on face to face sooner than later.
Yeah, for sure. We'll do. Take care.